Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the new home of TLDcast. No, just kidding. Just kidding. We're just here for the day, hanging out with the Mindspace folks who I'll walk around and show you guys this fantastic office short. But for now, let me tell all of you folks that are listening for the first time about who in the heck we are. We are the training, learning, and development community, chat, broadcast, and conference. And thanks for being in here today, everybody. Craig's here helping me out today. Fantastic. Thanks, Craig. Kara jumped in and said hi, but I think she had to bail, so that's all right. But we do have our UK representation, so that's great. Joe, thanks for jumping in and hanging out. Maybe Marco will be popping in here shortly. We'll see, but it's good to see so many of you in here so early. Today we're going to talk about creativity because we're hanging out in the Mindspace offices, and that is a big part of what they do. If you guys want to hit up there, mindspace.net, you can see more about that as well. And actually, I should probably be sharing my screen as I'm talking about this, but while I'm figuring that out, don't forget that we also have a fantastic membership option for you guys. If you are still contemplating it and thinking to yourself, I can't possibly spare 15 bucks a month, that's okay. There's other ways that you can support us and be an active part of the community by just giving a shout out to all your friends and saying, hey, there's this great community of training and learning and development professionals that hang out every day and chat. Just click that invite button up there and tell your network to come hang out with us and let us know what you guys need. That's why we're here. This community is for you and it is built by you. I'm just the guy that sits here and clicks the go live button every day. So I do the work of training, learning, and development just like you do. And so this is not the only thing that I do. So in order for this to happen, in order for this to be successful and for everybody to get value out of it, it's a shared responsibility. So if you've got an idea or a topic or something you want to talk about, please feel free to reach out to Luis or myself or to Kara or Craig or really anybody in the community and find out what's going on. So, so be sure to do that. Also, we've got a Slack group. If you haven't connected with the Slack group yet, you should do that because there's lots of great conversations going on. There's also a help channel for those of you that have not been, maybe you signed up a few months ago and you just haven't been back. You should go in there and check out all the new channels. And if you need any sort of help with a project you're working on, questions about a particular solution or struggles you're having doing e-learning development or anything else for that matter, just drop a quick question in that help field and the community will jump right in and give you some fantastic advice. I've already been hearing some great stories about people getting some amazing value from the TLDC community. So keep it up, everybody. It wouldn't happen and it wouldn't work so well without you. So thank you so much for doing all of that. I dropped a question in earlier, and now with all of you jumping in and saying hi and hanging out, the question probably rolled off the screen and nobody saw it. But since we're in a creative agency, I just thought I'd ask you guys what you think of creativity when you think about doing the work of training, learning, and development. What do you think of when you think of the opportunity for you to be creative in what you do? What does that mean? And Joe says creating the training collateral. Yep, that's a great opportunity to be creative. Conversations with learners in the delivery. Yep, conversations and relationships with clients, internal and external. Being creative in our own professional development. Yep, what can we access? Where can we communicate? Sure, all good stuff. What else? What do you think of when you think of being creative? Thanks for reposting that, Joe. Appreciate that. And just because it's gloomy and rainy wherever you are, Molly, does not mean you can't be creative today. And listen, this isn't fair for me to just sit here by myself and have these guys from Mindspace just laughing at me while I do this dang thing. So they're going to have to join me in a second if y'all don't snap up and drop some answers into the chat. All right. So here's what we're going to do. Being creative. Step 1, is your environment a creative space to work in? I'm going to disconnect here real quick and take you all on a walkabout. And we're going to see what a creative space can look like. Ajay says, collaboration and more minds working together. That's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of being creative. Come on, people, step it up. I used to think you were a creative bunch. Where are my creative thinkers? Games, all right, On, thank you. That's a great one. And Joe, I can't just read your article right now, but I will bookmark it and go back to it. Give us a summary. All right, while you guys are doing that, I am going to walk around and show you guys this place because it is pretty darn cool, and it's worth you guys seeing it. So you'll have to forgive me for the wobbliness as I do this, but I could not figure out how to stream on the mobile, and so we're going to walk around this place. First of all, oh wait. Excellent choice of fabric on the chairs. That's epic creativity. And Mr. Chad, just say hi.
Hello,
Everybody knows
everyone.
Chad. Good to see you this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming.
All right. Yeah, it's always awesome to be here. So this is the office in Tempe, Arizona, for those people who aren't around here and don't remember seeing you in at TLDC 18 because you were there.
I was there.
You were there, and you met a lot of people.
I sure did.
Yeah. Any of these people look familiar? I could just like if you're looking at those folks.
Luis. I met Luis.
Who remembers Chad?
No, we had a few great conversations, and it's we're really excited to be part of this group and this conversation because of the creativity and because even if you're not natively creative, there's an appetite for thinking outside the box and really being excited about the audience and raising the level, integrating technology, different things like that. So so happy to be part of this and happy to share with Brent and Luis.
Yeah, absolutely, and happy to have you hanging out with us. So maybe you can walk us around and show us the Mindspace offices. What does a creative agency do when they build an office? They do things much cooler than the rest of us. I'll tell you that right now. So when you first walk in, here's their waiting space. For people like me, when I'm meeting them for the first time, you just hang out and fall asleep on their comfy couches.
That's right.
That was always the best thing. But the first thing that everybody notices, and you're going to have to tell me what some of the best responses are, but when you first walk in, it looks like this used to be a restaurant. So I have to spin this around. I can't like just tap on something and turn the camera around, which would be cool, but I can't. So if you didn't know any better, you'd swear this used to be a restaurant.
That's correct, and it was not. We actually get people walking to the door. There's a restaurant right next door, actually, Sammy D's, but we get people walking to the door a lot saying,
how come you're not open?
Jobs or any of that kind of stuff. But no, this was purposefully designed to mimic some of the trace of a restaurant because it has both open space but also the ability to collaborate and have small private conversations and sort of be set aside. So those characteristics that you see in a lot of restaurants were actually incorporated here. And Brent, our owner, actually is very very creative and has a passion for architecture as well. And our guard dog just showed up.
Oh, thank goodness. Wait, this is awesome. He's the puppy. Look at the puppy.
Stop.
See, this is live on location.
Come on, Nigel. It's okay.
You want to say hi, Nigel? Come here. Come here. Say hi to everybody. Look. Say hi. Look. Yeah. We have a new host for TLD Cast. He'll be barking us through the tour from here on out.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. So these are the spaces a little bit more up closely. So when people come into work, they jump into a cubicle and they get to be creative like they're in a diner.
That's correct. And we also have screens. We have power, places to plug in your phone, everything you need to basically sit here and start to dive in.
And be successful. Group stuff, group work.
Over here is where our dev team sits, actually. So we have, here at Mindspace, we have a pretty flexible remote work policy. And so the dev team usually shows up a few days a week, and then a few days a week we also work remotely. So allows for a lot of flexibility, especially for those of us that have half-hour or longer commutes.
Awesome. And we love the dev teams, right?
Yes, we love the dev teams.
Dev teams do good work. See how cool this place is when you just like look at it from the whole thing. Maybe I could give everybody like an aerial view. Look at the whole place. Looks like. Quick, somebody grab a screen capture before my arms get tired. Okay, good. And then and some really cool. What would you call these?
So these are breakout rooms. These are where we have a lot
pod.
of our. This is where we have a lot of our meetings. So when we're doing status updates or things like that, this is not where we do a lot of creative work. This is where we have phone calls and those types of things.
Does it ever get too comfortable?
Yeah, I think. This is our Hall of Hipster Presidents.
Oh, that is fantastic.
So.
And yes, I did say that word because it applies here, everybody, okay? Go easy on me. See if I can get a good close-up shot. You get me with the, okay, here's the best screenshot of the day. All right, did you grab it? I hope somebody did. You guys got to be Johnny on the spot with this today.
That's right.
All right. More office spaces, more fun. Are they themed? Every single one of them themed, or how's that work?
Not necessarily particularly themed. Usually there is some design concepts. So you'll see the one room over here is a little bit more colorized and hip. The one at the end here is a little bit more modern.
A little more black and white. And you can write on the glass, which is very cool.
You can write on the glass, which we have.
Very handy. And who's the ping pong champion at Mindspace?
Oh, that would be Kyle, our art director.
Kyle, the artists are always the best ping pong players, aren't they? Isn't that how that works?
Yep. But there's a lot of competition to try and knock him off. So.
All right. It's very odd, but the few times that I've been here, I don't remember the windows being so grand. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention, but.
Sometimes in the afternoon, the sun's a little bit intense.
So maybe that's what it was.
And yesterday, the rain got the windows all dirty. So that could be another part of it.
Yeah. But this is always cool. Oh, I didn't get this side over here. So this is Tempe, for those of you who are not familiar with Arizona. Arizona State University, it's like all of that. Like if I panned, this is pretty much, actually, this isn't all of it. This is just all of it in Tempe. It's much bigger than just this, but you get the idea. Pretty darn cool space, for sure. All right, we should walk back into the conference room and talk creativity, because people are going to be working now. Oh, the guard dog is keeping track of things too. That's all right. He can come be a part of it too. It's okay. All right, everybody. You got a piece of it. Did I miss anything in the chat, everybody? As far as creativity in the work that you do? Just everyone drooling over the space. Yeah. Luis, when are you going to get us an office like this? Come on. Let's figure out how we can make that happen. But anyways, all right, let's get back down to business and make sure everybody gets some value out of the day. That was a ton of fun, and I'm glad everybody likes that because it does fit nicely into this conversation as far as environments and being creative. And what does, we had this conversation at TLDC 18, actually. I remember somebody, I don't remember exactly who it was, but one of our speakers was talking about the space you create for learning and how it can impact that. And I don't think it's that much different than creating a space to be creative. If you're creating a space to be creative, there's reasons for it. And I think similar reasons can be used and applied for building a learning space. Yes? What do you guys think? I don't have to point the camera at you to talk to you.
I can come over here.
Oh, okay, come over here and sit down.
All right.
So I'm not just talking to my screen. All right, it's like, this is so much easier than having like split screens and all of that. Like, this is why I have to just invite people out to an office or something.
Yeah, for sure.
If I had one. So what happens in this space? Like, what does it feel like to be creative in a space like this?
So creativity is a lot about inspiration. So drawing those elements either out of your environment or out of your experiences or out of pop culture. I mean, one of the ideas I thought of when you were talking about the asking the questions about creativity is, for anybody who watched the Super Bowl, you saw the Tide commercials, right?
Yeah.
And that was a very unorthodox idea to be able to say, well, actually every commercial is a Tide commercial. And the ingenuity and the genius that pulled through was absolutely incredible. So everybody was watching the second half and thinking, oh gosh, is that a Tide commercial?
Is it going to be a Tide commercial?
I see the Old Spice guy, and I hear the whistle, but is that a Tide commercial?
Yeah.
And so it really involves drawing that inspiration and being willing to step outside the box and think about what could be and think about what could be new and how that could impact the thing that you're doing.
I think that's a good direction we could run down, especially for e-learning, for everybody that I know that does the work that we do. It's scary to be creative because, especially when you're talking about compliance training and stuff like that, in order to do something really outside of the box and edgy can sometimes rub people the wrong way, or the people that have the ultimate authority to say whether or not you should do it might go, they might not like it. Your target audience may be okay with how creative it was, but there might be an executive or somebody somewhere that feels like it's too much. Or there's a decision by committee, which normally strips all the fun out of everything.
True.
And I think it's just part of the work that we do. And so I wonder if anybody in the chat maybe has any ideas on how can we avoid that? How do we get to be creative in an environment where sometimes we're just not allowed to be?
Bring data.
Ah, okay.
So the first thing you have to do is start to quantify. You think you might have a problem. Start to quantify that. Start to ask your users questions about their experience or how effective it was. Or, for compliance training, measure the safety record, measure the incidents that you've had in the past month or the past year, and compare that to what you're doing. And if you're seeing that there's a correlation in that if I do the training or not, it doesn't make an impact on the data, then your training is completely ineffective and something else needs to be done. So
that's how you're going to kind of convince somebody to say, listen, you've been doing it this way and you've been taking all the fun out of it for so long, it's still not working. You still have the same problems. Right. And I know you guys are going to jump on me and say, maybe it's not a training problem. Okay, let's get past that. Thank you. Let's just assume for a second that it is a training problem. It is a knowledge and skills gap that you need to fill. Let's start there. All right. And let's figure out how, with data, it's great to tie those two together because it's a hot topic all the time these days with analytics. And I wouldn't normally put a conversation around data with a conversation around creativity, but I see where you're going with that. And so what could we do? Let's dig a little deeper. What can we do with that data? We can say that it's not working. What you're doing isn't currently working. and we can get data from our users, what else? What other data could tell us that we maybe need to try to be a little more creative?
Well, I mean, you can certainly compare with industry trends, or you can go and ask a director or a VP how this aligns to business metrics or things like that. But I'll ask everybody to just take a step back to their high school chemistry class or their high school physics class. What did you do to prove the theories? You did experiments. And so what a great time to be a little bit creative is to take a small group of 10 and to say, we're going to try this on this group of 10 to see what they think. Or, hey, we're thinking about changing some stuff up. How would you react if the training were this? Or we're going to switch from the referential to an experience training. And we're going to do an assessment at the beginning to see how we can tailor this experience to you.
Gotcha. So how many of you in the chat have done an experiment? Like just said, found some low-hanging fruit. Oh yeah, and I guess we should introduce, I thought we did, but maybe I just jumped right into TLDC 18, but I'll jump into that. And maybe for those joining late, yes, sorry. Yeah, so how have any of you done any mini experiments to prove your point, either with or without approval? I think in some cases, you're never going to get the approval, so you kind of just have to take a risk and say, okay, I'm just going to spend a little bit of either my own personal time or a little bit of somebody's time on the team to craft a really, really creative outside of the box solution for a small problem, one that's low risk,
yep.
Right? And making that happen. Who in the chat has done that? Anybody done that either with positive or negative results?
Well, and that's an interesting point as people are jumping in and responding. First of all, failure is always an option. If you watch Mythbusters, you know this. But failure doesn't necessarily mean that that's the end of the world. Failure is actually part of the process, and it's important to analyze the results even in failure, so that you can take those results and learn from them and turn that thing around and make it a success. So don't be afraid to fail. Failure is actually one of the greatest teachers that we have in learning, actually.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I'm just scrolling back through here to see. Yes, Craig, you did miss the dog. I mean, Sam, you missed the dog. Thank you, Craig, for pointing that out. We'll make sure that the dog says goodbye before the end of the broadcast today.
Oh, and he'll love that.
Yeah, all right, so good. And how about you guys? I mean, do you guys do that with customers at all? Have you ever had a customer that has said, well, we kind of need to do this, and you're like, well, how about if we just take a little bit of that budget and just do something really creative and on the edge, and then we'll also do the other stuff for you that you want us to do, but we want to show you something really creative that we've been working on that we can do. This
is how Mindspace got their start in learning and training was. And I'll tell a little bit of the story for those who aren't as familiar. So Starbucks came to us about 4 or 5 years ago, and they recognized they had a problem training baristas. So sort of the background of that is that the barista training process was hands-on and card-based. And baristas were not making it through the process quickly and predictably, and it was causing a strain on them just emotionally to try and, become a barista. There was all this, overwhelming information to know, everything from drinks to how to treat a customer to how to mop the floor to what happens if there's any kind of threat or something unusual happening. So we really helped them to devise this digital program and put it together and deliver it. And a lot of it revolves around activities. So you're not just learning what's in a Frappuccino, you're actually pushing on the ingredients to make the Frappuccino. So
virtually making a Frappuccino.
Virtually making a Frappuccino. So that's really part of our heritage. And as we deal with our customers and even some of our prospects, a lot of times we'll come up with a pitch or some sort of core idea that then kind of wraps that that central project. And sometimes it works out really well. Sometimes we fail, and we gather that data and we learn from our failure as well.
It's awesome, and I think to Craig's point, maybe this is a good opportunity to stop and take a step back, since we now have more people hanging out with us and that maybe missed the beginning. So give us a little bit of the Mindspace background, right? And a little bit more of the idea behind a creative agency turned learning and development product. But then also tell us a little bit about yourself too. Introduce yourself. I just called you Chad, so
sure.
I didn't do a very good job.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Chad Bellin. I'm the Director of Products and Strategy here at Mindspace. We're a fairly small team, but what we do is really focus on a lot of larger projects, a lot of creative projects. That doesn't mean that we're not dipping in and especially networking with smaller companies and other people in the industry. I love going to shows and meeting other great vendors and really good thinkers. From the TK show here in San Jose back in January, I just had a follow-up with a consultant that I met there who's an expert in the micro-learning field. We just had that follow-up yesterday, and it was a fantastic conversation. So Mindspace is that creative learning agency, as we mentioned, and that's really kind of brings in a lot of the concepts that a lot of people would normally associate with marketing. So the commercials, the ads, the print, and all of those kinds of things.
Yep. Those
do a great job of telling a story, and we define learning as transferring knowledge from one place to another. And in a 30-second Tide commercial, you're gathering all of this information, even though you didn't have to read it, or you didn't have to click buttons or do knowledge checks or things like that. And so those are the types of ideas that we really focus on. And we bring a lot of the branding and the company culture really into some of the experiences that we create. And in case nobody has really considered this as part of the training program, learning, training, those conversations are your opportunity to communicate a lot of different things with your audience, whether it's customers or whether it's internal. You can communicate things about your brand, things about your culture, those mission statements that are written on the wall sometimes. This is a great opportunity to have this conversation and to make your employees or make your audience feel really great about your company. So as the creative learning agency, we try to bring those things together in really special experiences. Yeah,
we had actually a lot more than I had originally thought I meant to put on the program. But we had iSocial fans at TLDC 18, and he's digital marketing guy, live streaming and talking about the connections between the two. But we also had Ann Wolf, who used to work for Apple as the marketing director, but she is also now a teacher, a professor at ASU, teaching in marketing and teaching in the legal school. And so she had a lot to share. And I think a lot of the messages of how marketing relates to learning and development sometimes get lost. And that's the reason why I bring marketing people into a learning conference, especially the ones that I know get what I do and that I've got a relationship with, and that they get, and they also see how marketing is connected. And which is why it's always fun to see, and why I was so excited to meet you guys for the first time, to see it actually happen, where a creative agency starts pointing all of its creativity and muscle towards our industry was very intriguing for me. The other piece that I wanted to talk about a little bit is just the idea of being able to have a different conversation with the business. So I would venture to guess that when you guys walk into a business meeting, it's a little bit different than if a training team or a learning and development consultant or professional is walking into a meeting with a consultant. And I don't know if you've seen that firsthand in bidding on projects or anything like that, but just in your experiences so far, where you don't have to give away any of your secrets of how to walk into a client as
Sure.
talking business, but where do you see that our industry misses the mark? I guess that's the real value that I want to get is what do you find that's more helpful in those conversations that we all need to get better at?
So I'll relate a story. So last year in January, myself and some members of our team flew to Boston to kick off a project with a very, very, very large bank based in Boston. And this was a business transition project where they were trying to redefine job roles and make people comfortable, people who have been doing certain jobs for a number of years, make them feel comfortable that the future of the bank still involved them and that this process was going to be okay. And they really wanted to create a series of highly branded emotional training modules to really kind of get everybody on board with this transition that they were going through. And so there was a 2-hour block in the afternoon. So we met with the project team, and then there was a 2-hour block dedicated to the marketing and brand team, where we basically got skewered on everything and anything associated with the brand, because we had access to their brand book and all of those kinds of things, and how would we represent their brand to their employees. And in the first 15 to 20 minutes of this, our creative directors basically took over and talked about mood and theme and placement, and really got the conversation completely turned around to, oh, okay, well, maybe this can be really interesting for us. And so fast forward beyond that meeting, we turned in the first of the modules several weeks later, and it had to go through this complete brand review process. We had 2 comments on what we had to tweak and change. And then they basically said, run this by us from now on, but these guys got it. So that, and we have a lot of experience dealing with marketing teams within companies, but this is going to be one of those trends, I think, that plays out over the course of the next several years. It's the war on talent.
Yeah, right. But let's dig a little bit more deeply into that in the sense that because I can hear people thinking it, and I don't know, somebody probably dropped it in the chat or not, but you're going in as marketing, and their problem, right? If you're talking about addressing a business problem, and you're trying to figure out whether or not it's a training solution, it sounds like they originally perceived their problem or the challenge they were trying to solve was a marketing one, and you came in and you offered them a marketing solution, and so there was some pairing there. Where does the learning or building a training intervention come into it? Or do people still mostly come to you guys for marketing first, and then the training stuff just kind of follows later?
Absolutely not. So a lot of the people that come to us are really interested in the combination of, yes, there's training and there's this transfer of knowledge that we need, but we also want that brand aspect, that brand loyalty, that connection to who we are and what we're about. And it's becoming more important to a lot of companies to really kind of pair that up with their message. It's not good enough to just kind of rifle through the stock static training. We want to say, at Mindspace, here's what we do. And here's the little tweaks and differences that make us unique. And by the way, if there's special parts of the culture about individuality or taking risk or those kinds of things, those are that's a great place to sort of communicate those to make somebody get that broader picture and to feel comfortable.
Yeah, it's like because we often talk about this when we're talking about like templates and doing courses and things like that, right? It's like we have to go to the marketing team because they're going to build us a PowerPoint template, or they're going to build us a Captivate template, or whatever authoring tool that you're using. It's like you've got to go to somebody else to get all that stuff. And we try our best as instructional designers and e-learning developers to incorporate that and to figure out how to do it. But it's almost like we're trying to become marketing people, brand designers, and all of that on top of our regular job, which is figuring out the instructional integrity of it and all that side of it as well. So, I mean, is there anything, like, does that ever come together at some point and more smoothly, do you see?
There's a lot of companies out there that have developed really good symbiotic relationships between groups like training, HR, marketing, and even in some cases there's talent development or business transformation or things like that. In this case with the bank, the business transition team and the marketing team were locked together. They were in the same meetings and planning and all of those different kinds of things. And HR wasn't far behind. We got to meet with a rep from HR as well.
So it was sort of a change management issue that they were trying to solve. And training is always a big part of change management.
Right. And it doesn't have to be the the VP of marketing. It can just be, let's have access to the brand book. Let's pay attention to what the employee handbook says, and take those things into account as we're developing those templates. And that's just step one.
Yeah.
Just don't ignore that stuff. Make it look like it came from your company, and make it seem homogenous with some of the other things that your company is trying to communicate. From an employee standpoint, if I see things that all look kind of the same, have the same tone of voice, I'm not being praised on one side and beaten over the head on the other side, I start to get a more cohesive understanding of who the company is, and I probably feel better about working there because I'm seeing that same messaging and that same tone.
Well, I'll play devil's advocate here because I can remember, and I don't know if this still happens to you guys, but I can remember not liking that kind of pressure. It's like as a learning and development professional, I remember thinking to myself, we should be able to craft our own visual experience, but then marketing would come down and say, how come you guys don't have the branding, right? Here's the brand book. We're going to put you guys all through some brand training so that you understand how this all works. And so you got to have the corporate border around it, and then and all of that. And then everything you create out of the learning department, on the bright side, that's great because you've got a marketing department that's engaged and they're willing to give you all the assets you need. So that's good, because I've been on the flip side where it's like, I can't get marketing to work with me for the life of me. They're too busy doing their own thing, and it's just a huge pain. But then there's the other more militant corporate branding department that is crushing everybody with, you must stick with these standards, you must work within this box, the logo's got to be here, and all of that. And then it doesn't, or at least we think in learning and development that we've got no room for creativity and we're being stifled. But yet I've always found ways to still be creative within those branding constraints. But it's difficult. I've experienced it on both sides. And do you ever see that kind of struggle?
Absolutely.
Both sides of it?
Absolutely. So what I would recommend is, a couple of different things. First, take your marketing contact out to lunch, or
I always say that about the IT guy too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take your IT guy out to lunch and take your marketing person out to lunch.
Develop a relationship and open the lines of communication, because without that, you're making assumptions, they're making assumptions, they don't know you, you don't know them, and so there's just this buildup of tension to the point where it's going to become a problem.
Yeah, why do you keep wanting my resources? My people need to be doing marketing stuff. Why does the training team keep coming and asking for the graphics designer's time, and so that they can build pictures for your stupid training that you have to do, or whatever.
And even if it's not a big issue, sometimes that tension can create the nitpicking and Brent's doing a terrible job, so I'm just gonna crush him and hope he leaves, and then we'll get somebody else to work with. So open the conversation. The worst thing that can happen is the situation is no worse than it was before. If that person's going to be adversarial, they're going to be adversarial, and there's nothing you can do about that. But you at least know you've made the effort, and you can start working around. So communication is the number one key. Cool. And then, trying to align your focus with the focus of other related groups can be really helpful, because in that sense of creativity, people from HR might have great training ideas.
Yeah.
Or you might have great ideas that could influence the hiring process or the recruiting process and make your job easier down the road.
Right.
So the communication is really the key to opening and unlocking that whole ecosystem.
Yeah, it's very cool. And Ajay's right. Ajay's been talking about this, getting connected with the business for a long time. There's a lot of folks in our industry that are slowly coming around and starting to realize that that is important, because for so long we've been in our silos, right? It's always been the ivory towered silo of the training department within the organization. And I remember working within that silo in places where we just did our thing and you barely got out of your cubicle ever. You know, you did your e-learnings and you built things and then you updated the old things that got old, and that was pretty much it. You never went out to talk to people. But now you have no choice. I mean, I guess maybe this isn't even a good question for you, being more on a consulting and a contracting basis, but inside of the corporation, maybe this is a conversation we need to put on the back burner. Maybe somebody can take a note for me. Whose responsibility is that? I mean, yes, it should be everybody's responsibility, but at a certain point, if you've got a large training team, there's really no need for the whole entire team to be going around and meeting everybody in the company like all the time. I mean, that's good, and that everybody from a career perspective should be building their network internally and meeting everybody. Yes, but I would think that the manager would be the one needing to build those relationships, formulate those ties in order to be able to have strong connections with each of the folks. It sounds like a no-brainer, but I don't think it gets mentioned specifically enough in our conversations that we have. It's just that everybody should just go do it. Maybe not so much.
No, and it really depends on the nature of your organization too. So at the TK show, I met the training manager for Omaha Steaks. He's a fantastic guy. And to hear sort of the inner workings of this very large, well-known, but
any
private
of you bought
company.
Omaha Steaks?
Omaha Steaks.
You bought the truck show up at your place and you order a whole case of prime rib or something?
But if and shout out to Brian if he ends up watching this. But he talked about the relationships that he's built with his peers in HR and marketing, and they're a fairly intimate organization. So not that difficult to know everybody, but at the manager level, it's crucial because that's where you can develop those processes and some of those those norms that here's how the process will work. Now, we wouldn't want to discourage graphic designer from talking to instructional designer, but we can't be, everybody's busy and they have their jobs to do and all those kinds of things. So, so I think that process needs to be based on the size of the company and the nature of the organization, and it can't be a free-for-all. But certainly, I would look to leadership to start to spark that conversation.
Yeah, you guys crazy. I'm curious, since they're kind of mobile, does he must have some interesting challenges as a training person for them. Do they still drive the trucks around and do the delivery and selling?
A lot of their business is mail order.
Okay.
And what his challenge is, ironically enough, is that he's got a corporate environment of accountants and strategists and things like that. And then he's got a training and service department that's very, very large and has a completely different demographic and different needs.
The whole field crew.
You can imagine what happens in October and November.
Yeah,
they ramp way up.
Okay.
And then the production facility is a couple of miles away from the corporate office. And so there's some influence that he has there as well. So the challenge there is the diversity in audience. You have a corporate audience, college degrees and things like that. You have your customer service folks, and then you have this production facility. So really, really dynamic and interesting problem there.
Yeah, for sure. And it would be interesting. If you still know that guy, you should tell him to hang out with us sometime. I'll get him on as a guest and he can talk about his challenges with
For
us.
sure.
I mean, I think everybody kind of has those. I can think of a lot of companies right off the top of my head that have very similar challenges, right? You've got your office staff, you've got your field workers, that could be sales or it could be customer service, people that are out there. And in some businesses, those folks play the same role. They're the customer service and they're the sales and they're just the field staff. But then there's also that operations and that manufacturing group or the planning and logistics group, but everybody, making everything happen. So you've got, 3 very distinct groups. And then there's always those questions around, do we centralize our learning and development? Or do we decentralize it and let everybody kind of have their own and then they share, right? And so, lots and lots of organizational questions that come out of this as I'm thinking this.
And that could be an opportunity for creativity.
There you go.
And experimentation to think about some of the dynamics of those issues. I mean, at the local Valley of the Sun ATD conference here last October, I met a vendor who they had a mobile solution and shared a story about how they were helping meter readers from a utility do some social learning. And there's one guy that knew like everything about the meters, and there's this other group of people that knew less.
Brand new, yeah.
And as things happened to meters, he would record stuff on his phone and kind of comment on it, and here's what to look for, and here's the symptoms and stuff like that. And that would get shared up. And that became the training. It became the YouTube of this company.
Yeah, so I always have been wanting to find one of these case studies. So if you know that person too,
I can
hook us up with that person, because I'm curious if this, because we try to force this on companies sometimes, I think, as learning professionals, because we do see the value in it. But was that organic? Like, did they have a system in place specifically for this one guy that knew everything?
The system was that guy got phone calls.
Okay.
Because I don't understand this.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't understand
Everybody's calling that one subject matter expert that'd been here forever, that knew all of the meters.
Exactly.
And so did he say, listen, I can't do this anymore? And then this was a challenge. Then the company said, okay, we need to solve this challenge. And they said, let's see if we can get him to do videos, or did he start doing the videos?
I don't know how that all came to be.
These are just things that I want to know.
But that was the end solution, was, really leveraging the expertise of this particular subject matter expert to basically make everybody else better at their job.
Yeah, I mean, and it's fantastic. And that's exactly what we talk about, is the value of social learning meets mobile learning meets just being engaged. And because I'm assuming that one of the fears they had too was, if that one guy all of a sudden, decides to retire or to bail or something, now you're stuck with a whole field staff of noobs struggling, not really knowing what's going on. Succession planning, that was the other word I was looking for, Craig. Thank you. I knew there was another reason why this would work. But yeah, I mean, those stories are always fascinating to me, and I think incredibly valuable, because they're few and far between these days. And I like, logically, we all have these conversations all the time. It's like, oh, this makes perfect sense, right? Why doesn't somebody that's doing a job that's new, or they encounter something different, use their mobile device, shoot some video, and then even if they don't have a platform set up to deal with it, like, just email it to everybody else in your network or whatever. And so that stuff probably happens sometimes, but to maybe figure out a way to formalize it a little bit, right? Not make it super hard, but one, make it easier for people to do, less scary, less drag and dropping or tapping and doing all of that, right? Make it a one button thing, open the app, shoot the video, talk through what you just did, and then send it, uploads it to the cloud, then the tech or whoever doesn't have to think about it anymore. It's there. Anybody else that's maybe subscribed to that customer service channel or the tech channel, on the main page, just gets that content information as they need it.
Absolutely. And I don't want to de-emphasize the importance of making sure you have the right tools. By the way, the right tools don't need to be expensive. The right tools don't need to be complex, but YouTube isn't the right place to be posting corporate videos that have trade secrets
IP and
IP and things like that. But there are a lot of different technologies for a lot of different things, and a lot of them are not expensive. And so just doing a little bit of research, getting that right platform, doing it right. And this can be something that can be done ad hoc on an experimental basis to start. Oh, does this work? There's value here. Yep, great. Now let's look into the platform. But that is important because if you're developing this program, you're going to want to have a database. You're going to want to have videos tagged. You're going to want to have searchability. You're going to all of those different kinds of things as well.
Sorry, I just got distracted by Joe commenting on Sam's comment, and I'm going to have to scroll back through. But we're also running out of time. But incremental experimentation isn't creative, but it can lead to the creative insight, or the creative inspiration can lead to the experiments. It can go both ways, I guess.
Well, and it kind of goes back to, what is the inspiration? Did you find that inspiration through some of these experiments that I set up because I don't know and I want to learn, or am I learning through the experiment?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter as much where the idea comes from. It's to that could potentially develop those ideas, and then going from there, recognizing the opportunity, and then going from there.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to do as we get to the top of the hour and have to close this out is help everybody to understand and to just realize that there's always opportunities to be creative, I think. It took me a long time in my career to figure it out, right? Sometimes you want to wait for permission for somebody to say, okay, you've been doing everything that you've been doing. Now you're allowed to go be creative, and you're allowed to go do something different. The older I got and the more jobs I had, the more I realized really that creativity part was really up to me, even if you've been told that the work you need to do needs to fit inside this box.
Yep.
I think within every box you're squeezed into, there's room to be creative.
Sometimes there's holes in the box.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes the boxes have holes too. That's right. That's a great way to put it. But I mean, there's always those little opportunities in those places to do something a little bit different and to experiment and to try something new and to be creative. And so if any of you are out there struggling in your job, and maybe you're bored with your job, maybe you are, you're looking for something else, I think that just trying to think a little bit differently about what it is that you're doing or the box that you're currently confined in. And if you are struggling with needing to come up with creative ideas, that's why we're here. That's why TLDC exists, is to, go jump into the Slack group and say, I'm stuck, and, we've been doing the same thing over and over and over again. And I'll bet money. I mean, everybody loves a great opportunity to be creative on somebody else's behalf. I always find that I'm way more creative on other people's projects than I am on my own that I'm being held accountable for, right? And so if you're like me in that sense, definitely reach out and, use the collaborative nature of the community and get some creative help. It might be just the thing you need to help you, stick out a frustrating job for a few more months or whatnot. So.
Yeah, and I've offered, with our sales process, I've basically offered to have a conversation with anybody. So if anybody out there wants to have a conversation, I know I saw AJ wanting to have a conversation earlier. Feel free to reach out to Mindspace. You can reach out to me at LinkedIn or anything like that. I don't mind having that conversation, networking with people in the industry as well. I find it fascinating to create those connections, to share ideas, and maybe if we can help with your inspiration, awesome.
Yeah. And so let me just also say thanks for being such a great supporter of what we're doing here at TLDC.
Absolutely, we're happy to be.
We appreciate it, and we love it because you're good at being a vendor in the learning and development community. It's been,
thank you.
Yeah, it's been, it's you value add, and having these conversations and just engaging with us in these types of conversations, I think is really important. And I hope others will follow your lead and start. And it doesn't even have to be with us. I don't say that to, follow your lead by, being a sponsor with us, although that's great. Contact Luis. But I think, and I've talked about this before in other venues with TLDC, is that we really want to change that relationship between the practitioners and the people that need service vendors and product vendors and anybody that's out there, for it to be less of such a contentious relationship and not so heavily sales oriented, but solution driven and being engaged and being a part of the conversation and helping even when maybe there isn't a sale looming in the next few months. And so I know I appreciate that. So.
Yeah, and just to kind of follow up on that, I mean, sales cycles are what they are, and a lot of times I have a conversation this afternoon with a very, very large pharmaceutical company who I started talking with last January.
Okay.
So sometimes, the process takes the path it does. Sometimes it is what it is. But there are a lot of great vendors out there who are, especially smaller vendors, farther away from the doors at the conferences, who are really interesting and who are really thinking about these problems that everybody's having critically. And there's a lot of people out there who are willing to form those partnerships. So definitely seek those vendors out.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a great tip too. Always, don't always spend all your time at the 20 by 20 booth up front, right? Go walk to the back of the expo and talk to the little guys. You'll be amazed at how much you can learn and how much you can find out from from folks getting connected there. So yeah, Joe, we love the small booths. Now all the big guys are going to be like, hey, we should get small booths.
Let's come up with a craft brand name.
That's the ticket. That's the ticket. Let's buy 30 small booths instead of one big one. Oh, man. All right, guys. Hey, this was a blast. Thanks for having me out here.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, this was a good time. I hope you guys all enjoyed this. Not your normal TLD cast, so we like to throw you a curveball every now and then. So I hope you guys had fun today. I know I did. And if you have any questions, I'll jump back and I'll just do a quick screen share for everybody because I think I'm still have it available. If you want to reach out to Chad or Josh or Brent at Mindspace, that's not me, Brent. It's the other Brent.
Very similar names.
Yeah, but reach out to these guys here. Hit up their website and check out the great work that they do. So I hope everybody has a fantastic day. And don't forget to click that invite button. Sure, we're done and we're locking it down for the day, but you can at least invite people to come check out the recording, right? And tell all your friends that, you know what, there was a great conversation that was had today, and you should go check it out. So share it on Twitter with all your friends. Engage that way, and also let's have this conversation over on the Slack group and chat more about this here. How can you be creative in training, learning, and development? So thanks, everybody, for hanging out. Thanks again, Chad.
Thanks,
Josh. Just yell out for everybody.
And I'll post my contact information in Slack as well. So everybody who has been asking for that, either hit up our website and click the link, fill out the form, or check Slack, and I'll post my info there.
Awesome. Sounds good. Hey, I forgot to show everybody my soundboard. I brought it today, much to everybody's chagrin. Everybody have a great day. Oops. Oh, come on.